ॐ चिन्तयामि हरिमेव सन्ततम् मन्दमन्दहसिताननाम्बुजम् नन्दगोपतनयं परात्परम् नारदादिमुनिवृन्दवन्दितम्. In the new year 2023, we will start the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Geetā, popularly known as Dhyana Yoga, the topic of meditation, otherwise also called Atma Sanyama Yoga. How people who live a disorderly life may bring themselves to an orderly life, marked by very less contradictions and very less of conflicts. Meditation is part of the integrated approach to bring that kind of transformation in the way we live. So the 6th chapter will start next week in 2023, and today, the 28th in India and the 27th of December in the West, we are going to attempt a bird's eye view or a review, looking back what we saw in the 29 verses of chapter 5, which we completed last week. Chapter 4 is popularly known as Jnana Yoga, the topic of pure wisdom, though it is also called Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. This 5th chapter is more referred to as Karma Sannyasa Yoga, with slight differences between these topics. All that these say, or all that these chapters throw light on, is the distinction between a phase of life where, whether we like it or not, we are in the domain of action. The urges in us, the unrest in us, some hurt, some goal, some identification, some obsession, some attachment, we don't know what. All of them together just will not let us sit quietly. Then the only solution that spiritual wisdom gives us is, all right, if you need to do, if you cannot sit quiet, but you need to do, you need to travel, you need to speak, you need to write, you need to meet people, you need to get your hands into things, fine, but do them all as an offering to the Lord. That is the karma vibhaga. And then a small number among us are ready for the higher level of spiritual practice, which is always in succession after karma yoga. It's not two divergent paths, rather they are in sequence. Those who have done adequate karma yoga will find in themselves that their urges have reduced. They may even sometimes get set to get into something, then an inner voice says, no, I will not repeat my old unwise ways. And what is more, the door to higher contemplation opens before them. It's not that they just drop karma. Actually, it is, in the first place, they appreciate bhakti or jnana or study of Vedanta. They enjoy it so much that don't be surprised They may even forget their old ways of acting or reacting or responding, call it as you may. So these chapters 3, 4, and 5 together have thrown abundant light on karma, which is to be made into karma yoga. Otherwise, everybody is into karma, sakama karma, desire prompted action anyhow. But action as service to other living beings, animals, birds, and plants not excluded. Action that is not for one's own selfish gratification, not for fulfilling one's own personal dreams, but action that has some benefit for others. In the process, we also may be taking a part of it. That's different. But primarily, the emphasis is on serve others. So let's take a look at the 29 verses. First of all, the first verse was a prashna, question by Arjuna. Oh Sri Krishna, you have been praising, renouncing the field of action, and in the same breath, you seem to also hold high the practice of nishkama karma, which means stay in action. How can one decide which is better? Though you have said a lot, I am not yet clear. Arjuna confesses that he is confused and makes an earnest appeal. Please tell me in clearest terms, which is greater? Sri Krishna understands that behind such confusion, there is lack of awareness of where one stands. Before you decide what to do, you must have a certain adequate understanding of who you are at this point of time. Yesterday, a lady who has been studying Gita for many years visited me and she had a question. She said, should we try to fit into the world or should we stay away from the world? That's the words she used. There are other expressions for that business. Should we dance to the tunes of the society or should we be ourselves? Or maybe a milder form too. Should we live in harmony with the society or run into conflict again and again? No matter what words you use and how you camouflage the hidden difficulties, the issue is here we are and there is the society around us and there is this confusion about how do we relate to the society. So we had a short discussion. In that it came out that actually the question cannot be answered unless you have a high degree of honest self-assessment. Unless you know who you are, not in the highest sense of self-realization, but in terms of your priorities, your urges, your likes and dislikes, your strengths, your weaknesses, your shortcomings, your skills. There are a number of things with which you sort of assess yourself. Unless you know how you are configured at this moment, eventually you may change drastically. Unless you know how you are at this moment, how can you think of fitting in or standing aloof? There is the expression in English, a round peg in a square hole. There's a square hole and somebody is complaining, I am a round peg and that won't sit in that square hole. Are you sure you are a round peg? Everybody thinks that you are a square peg that will fit very well into the hole. Are they right or are you right? So Arjuna is confused because in his agitated state of mind, he forgets a whole lot of components of what he is. And only a couple of segments are in the forefront. When he asks himself, who am I? He says, I am a student of Drona and Bhishma. How can I fight them? I am cousin of Duryodhana and Dushasana. How can I send arrows at them? That is coming up in his mind. That's the problem all of us also have. At a given moment, a certain aspect of ours comes to the forefront, we forget 1,000 other things about ourselves. So how does Sri Krishna answer? Sri Krishna says, very dexterous, Krishna says, really, both renunciation and selfless performance of action are one and the same, are equal. We had a long discussion on this, maybe running into 3 or 4 classes. All that he meant is, unless someone really has a great amount of vairagya, these two do not make much of a difference. Because unless you really have much vairagya, you go for sannyasa, you say, I am not going to do any worldly activity anymore. Because you don't have vairagya, you will mess up everything. Therefore, among those whose vairagya is not very high, some may go for sannyasa, but they need to be very careful. They need to continue to do vasanas. And a majority of people would do well not to venture into renunciation. Rather, develop the necessary viveka and vairagya. Develop the necessary sattvic nature in themselves through service to others. Because when we serve people, actually it facilitates so much of progress, speedy progress on the spiritual path. Whereas if hurriedly we take sannyasa and we are not truly fit for it, it causes more and more agitations. So a small number may go for sannyasa, even if they don't have very high vairagya. How do we justify that? Though they don't have very high vairagya, they may have a lot of sincere appreciation of Vedanta, such love of Vedanta, such devotion to spiritual teachers and so on. So some of those things will save them, will protect them, will stand by them. Though they are not truly fit for sannyasa, they will be able to get going. They may fall a couple of times, they will rise again and move. So, with that understanding, Sri Krishna makes terrific statements. Both of them are good, dear Arjuna. In fact, it's not about whether you are into some work or away from work. Actually, it is only question that needs to be answered is whether you still suffer from likes and dislikes. Dvesha and Kanksha are to be avoided. Therefore, the path of renunciation called Sankhya and the path of service called Yoga are one and the same, are equally good. Take either of them. What is important is you remain sincere. Do not make it a show. Do not deceive people. Thus, striking a great balance between the two options which otherwise look poles apart, Sri Krishna moves on. Then you have verses 6 and 7, where he explicitly says, unless somebody is endowed with yoga, the word yoga here means viveka vairagya. Unless one is endowed with viveka and vairagya, sannyasa is dukkham aptum, verse 6. Very hard. You may wear some clothes, you may hold some marks or some staff or this or that. You may do many external changes, but you really are not there. And in contrast, in the 7th verse, Sri Krishna gave a beautiful, inspiring picture. Someone who has grown, who has evolved inwardly, will actually, even if he doesn't take sannyasa, Kurvan api na lipyate is said in the 7th verse. Even if he is in the field of karma, inwardly he is already a sannyasi. The other guy outwardly was sannyasi, but inwardly was in karma. This fellow is outwardly in karma, inwardly in sannyasa. So what is important is where you are inwardly. If you match very well, your lifestyle matches very well with what you are inwardly, then there will be very less conflict. You are something inwardly, but showing yourself to be something else outwardly, leave alone others not accepting you or finding fault with you, you have internal conflict. In all the Gita chapters, there is a certain way of communication where Sri Krishna deliberately goes way high in a couple of verses, talking about Brahmanishta, talking about Atmanishta, talking about somebody who abides by the clearest perception of the pure self, deliberately goes so high, dizzy heights, and then he comes down again to day-to-day challenges. And more than day-to-day challenges outside, the more common level of wisdom that people have. Very few have the wisdom to stay as the pure self. That is where in 2 verses 8 and 9 we had seen the wise one knows about life, knowing every moment that she is not doing anything, though in the eyes of others, and she is also aware, she may be eating or resting, she may be running or sitting, she may be opening eyes or closing her eyes. No matter what she is doing, she may be traveling the whole globe or may not be leaving her little village. Nothing matters. Inwardly she knows she is not doing anything. And then coming back to a lower level, Krishna again advises us, Brahmani Adhaya. The entire chapter you may forget, but do not forget these 2 words, Brahmani Adhaya. Surrendering to Supreme Lord. Do what comes your way. Do your duties to the best of your ability. Do them well. Don't leave anything halfway. Complete them. Even if there has been a lot of delay, today again you decide. Make a plan. Go by the plan. Complete your work and do them elegantly. Karyam karma samachara, Sri Krishna had said in an earlier chapter. So with the famous illustration of the lotus leaf in a pond which does not get wet at all, Sri Krishna says, if we develop that broader ways of seeing things, where life is realized to be meant for service, not for personal, aggrandizement, then we will be like the lotus leaf. Though in water, the lotus leaf, Padma Patra, does not get wet. Go in this world, buying and selling, traveling and coming back home, meeting people, discussing, dealing with difference of opinion, agreeing sometimes, disagreeing other times, losing temper also at times, but quickly regaining our balance, all sorts of things happen. Amidst all that, if there is surrender to God, then we will be like the lotus leaves. We won't get affected. We are able to regain our poise, go to bed at night peacefully. There is the brilliant splendor of sattva in us. We ourselves will experience it. Then from 11 words, 11 shloka onwards, there is again some praise. I should say, starting with the 10th itself, the lotus leaf example. How good seekers, sincere spiritual practitioners, quietly do their work with their body, with their thoughts, with their intellect. Kayena vacha manasa, kayena manasa buddhya, with their indriyas. Yogis here are sincere spiritual seekers. They perform their duties for Atma Shuddhaye. They know that this success or that failure are not the big issue. What matters is, have I learned, have I grown, have I let go of some bad habits of mine? Have I said goodbye to some negative tendencies in me? That is Atma Shuddhi. Atma Shuddhaye karma kurti. Not to earn money, though that is part of the deal, but that's not the primary goal. Work is not meant for result really. Work is meant for an inner purification. Therefore, all high plateau advisors, while they respect the goals you have set in life, in the corporate world or in your personal matters, they respect, okay, really, in the next 5 years you want to be a billionaire. Good, that's okay. Sri Kumar Rao, whom I have quoted many times and on whose book Modern Wisdom and Ancient Rules I have conducted a webinar. 4 days from now, I'll be conducting a sequel to that. Dr. Rao wrote a letter to all his people. I am also in that email list as a New Year message. And it was startling. He has a way of putting things so beautifully. He says, as 2023 approaches you, let me tell you something which will shock you. That's when we get the email. Read what is that? With which he is going to shock us. Then he writes, you really do not want what you think you want. In italics. You really do not want what you think you want. What do you mean? Then he gives a very simple example. I saw the light of Geetā shining through his words. He says somebody wants or says, I want to be a billionaire in next 5 years. He says, that's how you have your expression, you have worded it. But really speaking, if you look deep in your heart, it's not about becoming billionaire. What you really want, and you have not, expressed it properly. You examine, if you introspect. He's saying no, I want to become a billionaire, the man says, the CEO or somebody in the. And Dr. Rao says, you may be saying it, but that's not what you want. The other man may get angry. How dare you say, well, you know better what I want, and you are rejecting what I am openly saying. I want to become a billionaire. Then Dr. Rao says, you know what? As you visualize becoming a billionaire, you actually are already visualizing or vicariously experiencing certain happiness, certain sense of fulfillment. Ah, I reached. Really, that sense of having reached, sense of happiness, that bliss is what you want. And today, in your way of thinking, you have connected that happiness which you really want with becoming a billionaire. Because in your present understanding, becoming a billionaire will give you that happiness. If I show you something else will give more happiness than becoming a billionaire, and if you please see clearly, you will let go of that desire. How wonderful. Gita, therefore, it is said, do not be so hung up with particular goal, result, phala. So, the modern language, focus on the process. Are you doing things? Are you going about your work through noble values? You are sensitive to other people? Or for the sake of some goal, you have stopped talking to your own husband? You do not even reply to some queries by your own children. They ask, Mom, what is there for dinner tonight? You just turn your face away because your goal, becoming a billionaire, maybe is bothering you so much. Some obstacles are causing such agitation. You are no more kind to your children, no more polite to your husband, etc. See the tragedy. Gita says you must focus on your process. The outcome will come to you. God will give you. If not the outcome you had envisaged, a better outcome than what you had visualized. God will take care of it. So there are several verses. Sri Krishna praises someone who has got the Gita's message, who has done a wonderful, mid-course correction during the travel. Your boat is going, and you realize you are heading in the wrong direction, and then you change the direction. Change in the direction. Foolish people think we have to change our boat. We have to change our boat. No, the boat is okay in a lot of cases. Change the direction in which you are rowing, you are taking the boat. So once more in 13 also he goes to the greatest height, that the true Jnani, not Karma Yogi, true Jnani. The true Jnani, even though he is present in this body, which is like a city with 9 gates, the true Jnani remains unaffected, neither doing nor making anybody or anything do. These are all high plateau teachings. And there are a couple of verses which are very appropriate, because this whole chapter is supposed to be a bridge to the 6th chapter, where meditation necessarily involves belief in God, contemplation on God, though some people give some liberal interpretations and they do say real Vedanta doesn't even demand or insist on God. Okay, we are okay with that liberal interpretation. But classical Vedanta has always praised, accommodated, and given place of pride to God. Ramana Maharshi was one of the most excellent realized souls who lived the Advaita Vedanta. And he himself was a Shiva Bhakta. He advised people to surrender to God. But if some visitor did not like that idea of God, he said, okay, all right, just inquire who you are. That will take you where you want to go. So there are 2 verses about which I brought this topic of God. 14 and 15 At the highest level, God has better things to do than rewarding you for the good and punishing you for the bad. Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam. Who is God? At the highest level, as Kenopanishad says, God is not what people worship in this or that form. Nedam yadidam upasat. Then who is God? Kenopanishad says God is that which makes the eyes to see, which makes the ears to hear. Eknath Ishwaran said, God makes the river to flow. God makes everything happen the way they are happening, and He Himself is invisible. That's the highest meaning. But on lower levels, God is karma phala data and so on. So, a certain advanced understanding of God is also part of this chapter 5. And that is when Sri Krishna has clarified several things. And to go quickly through the other verses, something like from 16 to up to 26, 11 verses, Sri Krishna praises those who misunderstood spirituality for a long time, but thank God, of late, recently, they understood. Oh, now we know where we went wrong. We made spirituality also another rat race. We were demanding appreciation, respect, praise, regard. Everybody should do the way we want. That did not leave us, even though we said we have come to spirituality. So these people who are praised here clearly understood their wrong values. Once they got into the right values, a lot of issues that had mattered before did not matter anymore. Like in the 20th verse, it is said, somebody who is now finally on the right track, in the right direction, somebody like that, upon getting what is favorable, does not get elated egoistically. Upon getting something unpleasant, does not sink in despair, does not lose his or her calm. Na prahrushyet priyam prapya. Apriyam prapya na udvijet. All this is said. Lastly, in the last 3 verses, keeping especially this 6th chapter in mind, Sri Krishna drops hints at what is involved in the exercise called meditation. If you are serious about meaningful meditation, we cannot afford to be very casual about how our indriyas operate, our mind operates. There was somebody who was so casual. He was about to sit for meditation. Then he remembered there is one samosa in the kitchen. Let me eat that samosa and then sit for meditation. Why is there some last date or last deadline for eating samosa? You can eat the samosa. Or are you hungry? Why are you? You're about to sit and then you got up and went to the kitchen to pick up the samosa. No, you know what you do. You go to the kitchen, then with samosa, some sauce, and then some tea also will go well with samosa. And you can't have a irresponsible, some kind of loose behavior with respect to indriyas, with respect to your mind, with respect to your feeling. You cannot sit for some 5 minutes and think ill of somebody who insulted you and you grind your teeth and then you say, okay, my meditation time is 6:30, it is 6:25. I can think like this about this enemy number one till to 6:29. Then 6:30 I'm going to sit and say Om Namo Narayana. What nonsense. Meditation is not to be thus restricted to that half an hour or 20 minutes. Yes, formal exercise you may do at that time. But if you are serious about meditation, you must be on guard. You must be extremely careful about any undesirable behavior of the senses, of the organs of action. That's what he said in 27 verse. Bhahyan sparshan vahikritva. And some tips on breath control. Because Buddhism in these days has talked a lot about breath observation, breath control, certain offshoots of Buddhism like Vipassana have touched upon breathing techniques. In a way, it has spread far and wide. Sanatana Dharma, those exercises are very much emphasized, but Sanatana Dharma from beginning to end is very, very comprehensive. It takes a lot of, it's like doing justice to the whole science. Buddha and Mahavira just kept God aside. God bless them. We don't have any complaint as such. But God is a reality, is the reality of this whole universe. God is the operating system. God is the super intelligence operating. For some reason, maybe the times were such, there was more misuse of God than right use, so they kept quiet. All right, they may have had their own reason. But the truth of the matter, just like if you learn classical music, classical dance, if you learn even a language, English, French, Kannada, Hindi, anything you learn properly, then you need to know a whole lot of things. It's one thing to have a working knowledge of Hindi, working knowledge, where you break rules, but the other fellow understands. To say, like in Bombay, there are all kinds of people who talk such wrong in Hindi. मेरा पत्नी आज अपना घर गया जैसे राम मेरा पत्नी but काम चलता है उस प्रकार if you just focus on some breath control this or that you will feel काम चल रहा है and becoming calmer. But liberation Vedanta argues is much more than quietening the mind. Anyway, Sri Krishna talks about breath control also. And he says, it's not just about some external exercise. Deep inside, vigatecha bhayakrodha. Deep inside, if you have not let go of wanting to become, wanting to prove how good you are, wanting to let people know how noble you are, how pious you are. People should know I am a divine person. When you want people to know you are divine, that wanting itself pulls you down from being divine. When you truly are divine, you are not interested in how people will see you. So Ichha, Bhaya, Krodha, they're all expressions of one malady, one basic problem. The little I, the little self, which can become famous, which can become rich, which can, and we are obsessed with that. We think we are that little self, and we waste all our energy on taking care of little selves. So vigatecha bhayakrodha. And as we said about God, about him, it was said in 14 and 15, in the last verse also, Krishna, using the first person pronoun, Mam, Mam Dnatva, Arjuna, when the spiritual seeker knows me, as inseparably involved in all that is going on. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam, he says, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, Suhridam Sarva Bhutana. Know me to be the well-wisher and friend of all living beings. If you know me in that fashion, Shantim Richat, you will attain peace. Therefore, lastly, once more we do agree that this is kind of summary of the previous 4 chapters and a wonderful homework or preliminary work paving the way for the coming chapter. So it is placed in a certain logically neat way in the whole of Bhagavad Geetā, etc. So we do say, but we also say, if somebody does not study 1 to 4, somehow could not get into 6 to 18, somehow one was studying, is reflecting on chapter 5 only. The way these chapters are designed such that every chapter is like a balanced diet. In this chapter 5 itself, we can get clarity on our duty, our relationships, our true nature. We can get clarity about how we may change the direction of our life's boat. Chapter 5, in other words, is self-contained also. No harm, or we don't lose much. But otherwise, it is a beautiful bridge between the teachings in the previous chapters and the teachings yet to come in the following chapters. Let's bow down before Bhagavan Vasudeva, Krishna, who treated us to such a wonderful coverage of Adhyatma Vidya in this chapter 5. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. Hari Om.